With that being said, thank you and welcome to the NASPA Region 2 Careers and Student Affairs Symposium. We apologize that we are not in person. We made the decision last Thursday because the news scared us with the expected weather. And of course, because we made that decision, it did not snow that much in New York City, barely at all. So I hope that all of you are in areas where it didn't snow too much and were able to get out this morning. I wanted to say thank you to both Teachers College, Columbia University, and DuVu University for originally agreeing to host these sessions before the weather got in the way. And specific thank yous to Dr. Tom Rock, who's the Associate Vice President and Chief Student Affairs Officer at Teachers College, Whitney Hedgepath, who's with us right now as Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives and Communication for Student Affairs at Teachers College, and Danielle Nesselbush, who is the Dean of Students and Title IX Coordinator at DuVu University, who together with me were the committee to create this program. And I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge and recognize that at least I am in an area which sits on the traditional homelands of the people of the Lenape. The land is both seized and occupied territory of the Lenape people. We honor the indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters and the elders who lived before here today, the indigenous today and the generations to come. We recognize, support, and advocate for indigenous individuals and communities. And by offering this land acknowledgement, we support indigenous autonomy and will work to hold ourselves more accountable to the needs of indigenous peoples. We also want to acknowledge that the land and those who have lived here since time immemorial we recognize and acknowledge the labor upon which our country, state, and institutions are built. And much of the vast and inequitable wealth of this country was built by enslaved peoples, kidnapped and transported from Africa and the Caribbean diaspora. The legacy is baked into the economic, legal, and cultural systems that govern our institutions and behaviors. And we are indebted to the immigrant, indigenous, and indentured labor, including exploited, trafficked, incarcerated, and undocumented peoples, both past and present, whose labor was and continues to be stolen or unfairly compromised. So with that said, I'd like to begin our keynote session first by letting you know about the schedule for today. You should have all received an email with links to the sessions for today. This is our opening keynote, which should last till about 10:30 this morning. Then at 11 to about 11:55, we have a program on intergroup dialogue and advancing DEI in higher education and beyond. And then a networking lunch. We hope you'll grab some lunch and join us for a panel discussion with myself and 3 other Chief Student Affairs Officers who will talk about networking and how to about your career and how to become a Chief Student Affairs Officer, how to build your career. And then we will conclude today with another program on creating a culture of care, a cross-functional approach to caring for the community during challenging times, which we are still in. And that's from 1:30, a little bit of a break, half an hour there, but from 1:30 to 2:30 this afternoon. So I look forward to having you join us for all of those sessions today. I'd like to start our program today, a brief introduction of myself. I should have started with that, actually. My name is Jeffrey Putman. I'm the Regional Director for NASPA Region 2, and I'm the Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. And I'd like to introduce our speaker today, who is Dr. Joe Bertolino. President Joe was appointed the 6th president of Stockton University on March 3rd of this, that's actually last year now, 2023. Stockton is ranked among the nation's top public universities with more than 160 undergraduate and graduate programs, as well as continuing education opportunities. It's located 1 hour from Philadelphia and 2 hours from New York City. Stockton offers unique living and learning environments throughout southern New Jersey. President Joe, as he's affectionately known, has been a social justice educator for almost 30 years and is passionate about student success and access to higher education. Prior to his role at Stockton, Dr. Bertolino led Southern Connecticut State University, a public institution of 9,000 students in New Haven, Connecticut, and pursued there several key initiatives and priorities, including raising the university's profile, establishing Southern as Connecticut's public university for social justice, expanding community outreach and partnerships, and building strategic enrollment and streamlining students' paths to earning a degree. Prior to joining Southern, Dr. Bertolino was president of Linden State College in Vermont from 2012 to 2016. And from 2004 to 2012, he held multiple roles at Queens College in CUNY, including Vice President for Enrollment Management, Vice President for Student Affairs, Executive Assistant to the President, and Chair of the Department of Student Personnel. Prior to Queens College, he also held the roles of Dean for Community Development, Academic Advisor, and Associate Dean for Residential Life at Barnard College from 1996 to 2004. Dr. Bertolino has also taught leadership development classes for undergraduate and graduate students and been recognized with several outstanding professional awards. He's a member of 7 different National Honor Societies, including Omicron Delta Kappa and the Golden Key. ACPA has presented him with the prestigious Anno Equiptus Award twice as an outstanding new professional and as an outstanding senior professional. Dr. Bertolino holds a Doctor of Education in Higher Education Administration and Leadership Development from Teachers College, Columbia University, and a Master of Social Work from Rutgers University in Camden, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Psychology and Sociology from the University of Scranton. So welcome, Dr. Bertolino, President Joe, and my friend and colleague. Thank you for being a part of this today.
Thank you very much. That was a mouthful. I don't know if anybody really cares about all of that stuff, but I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty informal, so I appreciate the introductions. I'm not big on formalities. So I'm hoping today, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. Sorry that we couldn't do this in person. I will confess I was looking forward to returning to Teachers College. It's been a while to see my friend Tom Rock and others, and have an opportunity to just kind of sit and chat. But we are in the post. I don't even know if we call it a post-COVID world. I'm not quite sure what to call it. But here we are, and I am looking forward to the conversation and happy to answer whatever questions you may have. And I'm delighted I get to sit in my comfy chair here in my safe space. So
Excellent. I think maybe we'll start, although I just read that long bio. But maybe what we'll start with is how you got to where you are today. What made you decide to want to be a college president?
I would say that it was accidental. In fact, it had never occurred to me to be a college president, particularly as a student affairs professional and as an openly gay man. In fact, when I first entered the profession, which also happened by accident, I was a high school teacher. I needed a graduate assistantship, and I wound up with an assistantship in residential life. And the director of residential life said, "You should think about doing this for a living." I didn't realize that was even possible. And for those of us who might remember, I don't know, paper resumes and mailboxes and stamps. At one point in my life, I found myself applying to a number of positions, and hence landed a position as a residence hall director at East Stroudsburg in Northeast Pennsylvania. And that is when my career began. And I would say that my route has been was a traditional student affairs route, that from resident director to student activities, Greek life, associate dean, etc. But in the early 90s, when I would attend various student affairs conferences, we talked a lot about both the student affairs glass ceiling and the gay glass ceiling. And essentially, we were advised at the time that it was highly unlikely that you would ever, if you were a member of the LGBTQ plus community, it was unlikely that you would rise to the rank of senior student affairs officer. There was no discussion about the possibility of the presidency. Fortunately, as time progressed and I found myself connected to some amazing mentors, and by connecting actually with NASPA, to be perfectly candid, and their their chief student affairs officer at that time, retreats, workshops, mentorship programs, I found myself, after many years at Barnard College, offered an opportunity to serve as the vice president for student affairs at Queens College of the City University of New York. And from my perspective, that was it. I had reached where I wanted to be. I was very excited. I'll let folks in on a secret. My first cabinet meeting, I have my jacket and my tie on, and my husband is brushing me off and saying, "Here you go. This is what you waited for, your first cabinet meeting." I come back that evening and he says, "How did it go?" And my response was, "It was a meeting." And yeah, it was a meeting, just a smaller group and bigger issues. So the glitz and the glamour and I'm not quite sure what I thought it would be, but um, it was wonderful, and yet at the same time, I would say it wasn't as shiny as people think it is when you first go in. But that having been said, I had a nice 8-year run at Queens College, and I had amazing mentors. And if if our participants today learn or hear anything from me, it's the importance of strong, good mentors that will help you move forward in your life, both personally and professionally. Um, about my 6th year in, Jim Meiskens, who was the president at that time, said to me, "Have you considered a college presidency?" At which point I burst into laughter and said, "You do know that I'm a student affairs professional, and two, I'm an openly gay man. Who's going to hire me?" So he recommended that I apply to the American Council on Education's Fellows Program, which I did. And for me, that was a life-changing and career-changing experience for two reasons. First, I was mentored by two amazing leaders, Renu Couture of the University of Houston and Julieta Garcia, who at that time was the president of the University of Texas, Brownsville, and Texas Southmost College. In fact, Julieta had been named one of the top 10 presidents of the United States that year, and last year received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Biden. And so I was very fortunate to shadow these two amazing women over the course of an academic year. And they were very clear, "Joe, this is what we're not going to spend our time mentoring you unless you are willing to make the commitment, A, to do the work, and two, to become a college president." And I had, between Jim Meiskens, Renu Couture, Julieta Garcia, they said, "We think you can do this," which then led me to, sorry, this is a long-winded answer, Jeff, but which then led me to two other important things. First, um, tracking down tracking down presidents who had come from the student affairs ranks. There weren't a lot of them, but they were there. And so I would get on planes and go and visit with each of those individuals, one of them being Jeff Docking at Adrian. That was probably in 2010. And then around that same time, Chuck Middleton at Roosevelt University and a group of 9 other sitting presidents pulled together LGBTQ leaders in higher education, a group of ALT college and university presidents. And I reached out to him and those individuals. And I think I came to realize that because of their encouragement and their guidance and their direction, this was a possibility. And so after my ACE fellowship, I threw my hat in the ring, and here I am 12 years and 3 presidencies later. And I've been very, very fortunate. So that's the long story.
So you answered like 4 or 5 of my prepared questions, but that's okay. That's why this is going to be a great question, a great conversation. I didn't think I was going to use all these questions that I have here prepared just in case, but I will start with how do you think student affairs helped prepare you for the role of being president?
Oh gosh. I think there should be more student affairs professionals in the presidency. I mean, just look at what's happening. Look at the conversations that were happening. Look at the crises that we're dealing with. Who better to lead than those of us that have worked on the front line dealing with students and their issues on a day-to-day basis? I mean, student affairs professionals, we deal with everyone. Our relationships are with all of the constituencies in one way, shape, or form. Mostly positive, but sometimes not. And so I think that we learn as student affairs professionals to navigate relationships. From my perspective, leadership is all about relationships. Those that you have, those that you're trying to build, those that you're forming, developing, ending. My entire job, I often say that there are 2 things that have served me well. One, that I am a student affairs professional every day. It's just that sometimes my students are personnel. And secondly, my social work degree has certainly come in handy. So I think that because as a profession, we understand, I think, intimately the importance of relationships, of holistic development, of the interconnectedness between various parts of our campuses and campus life. All of those skills are necessary for today's college president. Not to mention that in student affairs, we're used to working with very little. So we're not always highly
And
resourced. So
many of our colleges are dealing with the stresses of having very little right now
yes.
to do the things we need to do. So as you I think know, but as many of our colleagues here don't necessarily know, my dissertation was actually on the student affairs student affairs folks who'd become college presidents. And when I did it in the when I started the research for the dissertation in 2005, 2006, there were only about 30 presidents at the time who were chief student affairs officers. That number has grown significantly, certainly since then. And we Joe and I actually have a mentor in common, Sharon McDade, who was at Teachers College when we were both there, and who has studied the college presidency and who helped guide my dissertation. But she has said most recently in 2017 that the literature is reflecting an exponential growth in presidential responsibilities over time, and everything since 2017. Certainly the COVID pandemic making that even more so, even more true, is indicated that it's only continued to increase.
Mm-hmm.
How do you continue to develop and evolve as a higher education leader and a president to meet these continuously changing challenges?
Well, the presidency is certainly not the same as it was when I first started 12 years ago. There's no doubt about that. And both, and there are a number of factors, not just COVID. The political landscape has changed. The perception of higher education has seen somewhat of a downward spiral, and individuals are questioning the value of the degree. And so I would say that we have, as the academy has a lot to prove, and we are seeing even as of very recently, attacks on some of our most prestigious institutions in higher education. Folks, institutions and individuals that only so many years ago would probably have been considered untouchable or safe from the public domain, whatever the case may be. So I do think that we, as presidents, we find ourselves walking on eggshells quite a bit. You are one tweet away, or one comment away, or one action away from your campus spiraling in a direction that at times could be precarious, could be dangerous. I'll use that word. So I do think that we as presidents spend a great deal of time talking to each other. I think that happened before, but even more so now. I think when I think about my own development as a president, and I have changed. I look at my first presidency, I look at my second presidency, and I think, okay, what is it that I've learned? What is it that has changed? The most important aspects of my leadership continue to be ensuring that you're understanding the culture that you're in, the culture that you're surrounded by, and what is happening beyond your sphere of influence. Secondly, I can't say enough how important it is for individuals to take the time to listen, to learn, to observe, to ask, because what you hear, how people feel, how people are engaged or disengaged, and what is happening at other campuses, all of these things interconnect. They all can have an impact on your particular campus. And so my primary, even going to my mentors, is not what it used to be, because they had different experiences than I'm having. In fact, most of them sometimes will shake their heads and go, "Ugh." So really, I think for myself, connecting and continually communicating with my colleague presidents is probably at the top of the list. And then I would say that, look, relationships matter. And if you take the time at the front end to build strong, healthy relationships, when things go awry, then you are more likely to get help and support from those in your community if they know you, and if they believe you respect them and value them and value their opinion. And so understanding that your job as a leader is to build community um, from the ground up, I think is extraordinarily important. I don't know if that really answers your question, because there's no secret sauce here.
Right.
Relationships,
So,
conversation, listening, observing, and being comfortable seeking counsel and advice from others. Um, Being willing to acknowledge that you don't know. I think my community has appreciated when things rolled out, when things happened in October with the Middle East. I remember calling the entire community together and acknowledging the fact that this is hard, this is difficult, this is painful, and I don't have the answers. So what are we going to do for our community as a collective? I think sometimes folks appreciate hearing that. I think a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to show one's humanity. I don't know. I think that matters. Anyway.
I agree with that. And you've mentioned you mentioned mentors, which I agree is absolutely essential at any point in your career,
Mhm.
not just being a college president, but when you are a president, it is sometimes lonely at the top.
Mhm.
Um, and you've mentioned fellow presidents, but
Mhm.
who do you go to be your support network, and where do you find that inspiration? That won't necessarily be the same place, but
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you're president, everybody's friendly. Well, not everybody, but nobody is really your friend. That may sound harsh, but and you really know when you leave, who your relationships are with or not with, and that's to be expected. I think when you're in an environment as president, you're always the boss, and so it's really important that you have to remember that. So ensuring that you have healthy relationships outside of your campus community, I think is key. Um, and those come in two forms. Well, probably more than that, but obviously what we talked about in terms of mentors and colleagues and picking up the phone and going to them, but that's work. Okay, that's um presidents who have stepped down or retired often chuckle at the fact that, um, gosh, I now need to learn how to use the copy machine now, um, because I don't have people, or that all of a sudden you have all of this authority and all of these resources at your fingertips, and then you don't. And so that day comes for everybody at one time or another. And the question I ask myself is, one, how comfortable am I with that? Two, when all is said and done, who is important to me? And three, who are the people in my life that could care less whether I'm a college and university president? Because my husband reminds me quite a bit when I am home that I'm not the president of the house. Okay, keeps me very grounded. Um, and I think that family and friends matter because in the end, those loving relationships are all we have. Nobody, the titles, the stuff, we accumulate a lot of stuff, but it's again, I just think it's the relationships that matter. So I'm fortunate. I have a husband who works in the field, as you know, um, and we just spent the last you and I share a birthday, Jeff,
We do.
just the other day, and I just shared the day with neighbors, friends, family. I also encourage folks beyond healthy personal relationships. Um, I'm a big advocate of therapy. I think that there's therapy and coaching. Um, so I have a coach, even at this stage. In fact, I thought I needed a coach because I've been a president for a while and I'm starting over, a reset. This would be helpful. So that has proven to be very positive. And I'm a big fan of therapy. That's the social worker in me. I think that someone needs an unbiased, unfiltered person to talk about their lives and help them sort through the stresses of life because these are terribly stressful jobs. And if you don't manage your own mental health, I don't think that you can manage your team. I also think it's good role modeling. And these jobs can quickly have an impact, positive or negative, on your family and the people you love. So you need to take care of yourself. And I'm not going to say that I've always done that particularly well. I haven't. Um, but when I haven't, I've learned a pretty valuable lesson for not having done it. So
That's that's definitely good advice at any stage of someone's career. Um, so shifting gears a little bit, my dissertation research actually was on the pathway that folks took to be presidents, and one of the things that came out in that was that it isn't often the titles or role, the titles that you've had along the way, but it's the competencies or the experiences that you've had along the way. Um, and one thing I always give as a lesson, whether you're a student affairs professional or not, but in higher education, is that there are lots of opportunities that come your way as a professional. Like, for example, being asked to serve on an accreditation site
mhm.
review, self-study team, or being asked to serve in an acting role in either your office or in another office and gaining those other experiences along the way. Um, what do you see as some of the critical skills, I'll call them, or experiences that folks should look for or try to have along the way, whether or not the presidency is necessarily a goal at this moment?
Yeah, I think that if you're already a senior student affairs officer, folks are going to assume that you have sat at the leadership table, and that you have supervised a team. Um, that will always be key. Um, Interestingly enough, when I was going through my own search process, and this has happened every single time, even after having served as a president for a number of years, my originally I had thought my being a member of the LGBTQ plus community at that time, back in 2011, 2012, I thought that was going to be the issue. It was not. The issue was that, primarily for faculty, was that I was a student affairs professional, that I had not come through the traditional academic arm of the institution. Um, but we have seen a shift over the course of the last decade of boards and individual institutions looking not just in the academy, but outside of the academy. So I think that I, during my ACE fellowship and then prior to becoming president, I kind of made a laundry list um, of what were the areas, that the gaps, if you will, that I needed to fill in order for me to be seriously considered. Now, my first recommendation is, if this is something you are interested in pursuing, you should speak to search firms. Let them take a look at your materials, and they will tell you um, where you are falling short, what you might consider doing, and where you would be a good fit if you do X, Y, or Z. Okay. So for me, I was already teaching. I already had faculty rank at Queen's. So I was very fortunate in that regard. But if you are not in the classroom and you are looking to move to a presidency, then I would strongly advise that you do so, or at the very least, that you are working closely with academic affairs to volunteer to serve in some type of academic affairs capacity, whether it's an academic advisor or, as you said, I think that being part of an accreditation team, self-study, all of those things help to build one's credibility from the academic side of the house, and that's important because I often remind folks, just because I am not an academic doesn't mean I'm not academic. I am a researcher. I am a scholar practitioner. Famous words of Lee Knefelkamp and Sharon McDade.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, uh, what was it? The theory to practice or
Right.
practice
Yes.
to practice,
Practice
right?
theory, practice. Yes.
Practice theory, practice, right? Um, and articulating that as you are sharing your narrative of who you are, I think is critical. The second thing is be develop a relationship with the provost and the deans and find every avenue to be connected, because you will want search firms to call those deans or that provost to get their perspective. Secondly, be friends with the CFO and insert yourself in as much of the budget process as you possibly can. Um, Third, I think it's your next friend is going to be the chief advancement officer. Ask for a portfolio. Can you? I want to raise funds for my division. I'd like to have a portfolio. I'd like to work with you. I'd like to meet potential donors with you, et cetera, et cetera. Everything else you pretty much have covered under student affairs. You can speak to. But folks are gonna ask about raising money, relationships with government and community leaders, relationships with faculty. Anyway, so those are my immediate thoughts.
I think those are, first of all, those match. That wasn't a test, but they match the uh, the things that the dissertation showed were important, or that other
Mhm.
presidents who had come from student affairs thought were important. So you match. That's good. But there is something about the concept of you have faculty on search committees no matter what level position you're applying
Mhm.
for. If a chief student affairs officer is doing their job, when they're hiring a director of residence life, when they're hiring an assistant
Mhm.
dean to work on community engagement or student activities, um, they're bringing a faculty member in on that search committee.
Sure.
There's just something to be said. I remember in a very early search that I did, I had asked to serve as very early in my career as a faculty member, and had taught a class. And the first thing the faculty member on that search committee said is, "Oh, you understand. You
Hmm.
understand our plight. You know what it's like to be in the classroom." And I absolutely think that's critical and key. And then when you're dealing with a presidency, of course, we all know that long gone are the days where over 90% of the funding for the cost of education in a SUNY, I just happen to know because I've worked and studied SUNY, was borne by the taxpayer, right? Those days are long gone.
Long gone, long gone.
Um, and now it's you have to it's very much enrollment services and tuition driven, even at large public universities, but also the ability to raise funds through whether that's grants. Grant writing is another, by
Yep.
the way, experience. If you can get involved in, you
Yep.
should.
Hmm.
But also from alums, from constituent groups, from government, line items and budgets. People often talk about those as bad things, but that's bread and butter for many public
Right.
institutions. Though all those things that you've talked about, I think, are critically important, and not necessarily far away from student affairs, but you have to ask and look for the opportunities to be involved.
Yeah,
I think.
there's no doubt about it. Again, I think my recommendation here is to talk to current presidents, whether they've been in student affairs or not.
Right.
Um, hear folks' narratives, but two other things that I'll share that I think is extremely important. If you are not familiar with shared governance, it is very important, and it's different at every campus. It is
Absolutely.
very important that regardless any executive position that you are looking um, to garner is going to be it's going to be very important that you understand the culture of shared governance on that campus. So ask a lot of questions there. And look, I often I have always said to the faculty on the three campuses I have led, I'm a student affairs professional. I did not come up through the traditional ranks of faculty, and I know that, and I understand that. Therefore, I would contend that I will work even harder um, to prove my academic worth, if you will, and partnering with the faculty and ensuring that I am surrounding myself with people who are highly skilled where I am not as highly skilled, or who are better at certain things than I am. Um, I'm going to do that. So I always talk about the strength of the academic team and who we're hiring, and reminding folks that I'm not the academic expert. I'm an administrator, but my job is to get resources, to be supportive, um, and more often than not, to get out of people's way. So
Learning to get out of people's way is a good leadership lesson, no matter where you are in your career. And by the way, just to second a piece of what's been said, the 2023 survey of presidents by ACE does
Mhm.
I think it's every 2 or 3 years, but a survey of college presidents. The most recent one, which was last year, 54% came through what you're calling that traditional path, right? They were a faculty member, probably a department chair, a dean, or and then a provost or a VP for academic affairs, and then a president, right? That's what's considered the traditional path. But that if you go back to the 2000
Mhm.
or the 90s, was probably 80, 90%
That's right.
of the college
That's
presidents.
right.
It's now
Amazing.
only 54. And every time they do this survey, it drops
It
another
dropped.
couple of percentage points.
Hmm.
28% now come from the other administrative roles. So chief financial, chief,
Hmm.
and student affairs or development person, and that pathway into the presidency. And that number keeps increasing. And then, of course, there's also more that come from outside higher ed altogether. But the pathway is definitely getting smaller. And there are a lot of provosts when you talk to them who say they're just not interested in that job. They want to be an academic leader.
Yeah.
They're not interested in the external facing stuff that a president has to deal with. Um, and I think the other piece to this, which you alluded to in your opening remarks, that are relevant to student affairs, is that the skills, and a lot of student affairs presidents will say that their skills in helping heal communities, their skills in connecting people together, which are
Hmm.
very traditional student affairs type skills, were critical in them becoming college presidents. Because the other piece to this, and the piece we haven't really talked about, is when you're a president, your boss or bosses, right, are typically a governance board, a board of
Hmm.
trustees, a
Hmm.
board of regents, whatever your institution or system calls those people. Um, and they have different types of roles. Obviously, trustees are different in a private university setting versus a public university setting where they're typically appointed by government. Um, but how do you, as a president, deal with um, working with trustees? What's potentially a good example of how someone at a earlier in their career can at least gain an understanding of how trustees think and what they're looking for in terms of how a president performs and how an institution performs.
Sure, sure. I will say that my first two presidencies, I reported to a chancellor,
Hmm.
and the advantage there is that the chancellor provides a cushion, if you will, in some ways. Um, but you are always interacting with and navigating boards. I report to a board directly now, and and what's exciting about a board, having your own board, is your the freedom that it brings you in terms of decision making, the independence that you have in the decision making process. But you're also held more accountable for the decisions that are in fact made. The Because you have board members that are from a cross section of of areas, job areas or career areas, then each is going to have a different perspective on what higher education is and what it should be. In addition to that, most board members, their higher education experience comes from their personal experience or the experiences of their children or folks that they know or what they hear or what they see. And so it does take some time for newer board members to kind of wrap their head around the concept of the academy, the concept of shared governance, that we're not a corporation and that we function very differently. And albeit usually very slowly, quite frankly. Um, so so I have found and add that the next layer to that for public regional institutions that all of my board members are appointed by the governor. So the politics of that are also significant.
Mhm.
Um, and Stockton is in, I would say, the one of the reddest areas of a blue state. So the dynamics between the region and the rest of the state and the state house are also very different. So what does one do in that regard? First, I'm going to get back to where I've always started. Relationships matter. And so taking the time as a new president to meet with, communicate with, understanding each member of your board and building a personal relationship one-on-one is extremely important because it gives you a sense of where folks are at. You get to know each other. You don't have to agree, but building the relationship um, allows one to build trust, which then allows one to engage in conversations even when they're uncomfortable. The second thing I would say is providing opportunities with for board development. So ensuring that your board has particular materials that they may or may not read. Ensuring that you have people come in during meetings to educate, ensuring that you're sending board members to the AGB conference and other regional conferences. The most important relationship tends to be is between the board chair and the president, because the board chair generally drives the direction of the board. So that relationship, I think I communicate to my board chair pretty regularly. That relationship becomes just as important. Understand that you are constantly educating your board and that you are responsible for constantly educating your board, constantly communicating your board with your board, and constantly running interference where necessary between board members and other external individuals. So, I don't think it's any different than when we are navigating a team. Student affairs professionals, we know how to navigate teams.
Right.
We talk about it all the time. We teach it to our students. Well, this is no different. Um, the folks that we're dealing with might be different. Their experiences might be different. But at the end of the day, you're still dealing with people. You're still dealing with relationships, and you're still dealing with the importance of pulling together and forming a team. And so I would suggest to folks that um, if if this is a path you choose to go down, two things. Number one, whatever campus you're visiting, make sure that you have read the board minutes or what, and if those board meetings were live streamed and you can download them, watch them. Also watch the faculty senate meetings and read those minutes. And secondly, if you're just curious, all of you work for institutions that have a board, whether it's at the system level or whether it's at the institution level. Those meetings tend to be public meetings, or they are accessible the meeting information or the meetings themselves after the fact. You take a look at those. You'll learn what people what board members are talking about, what is important, and what the priorities are and how folks are responding to them. This is a very difficult time for institutions, for presidents, for boards. I agree with you, Jeff. We are at a time where an ethic of care matters. Healing matters. Um, yes, you can look at all of the numbers. Those are always going to matter. But if if you don't have a people strategy, if you don't focus on valuing not just the students you serve, but the people who serve your students, you cannot be successful, especially in today's environment where folks are coming off of COVID, where the conversations are are just filled with emotional tension and angst. People need to know as a leader that you care about them. The ethic of care matters. I always say there are 5 pillars that I constantly talk about. Um, my expectation as president is that we are going to make every effort to ensure that everyone in our community is treated with dignity, respect, kindness, compassion, and civility. Dignity, respect, kindness, compassion, civility. That is an ethic of care. And if you start from that point, um, even if um, I I'm booted out in the end, uh, I, I know that we have done the best that we can and what is right by our students in our community. So,
I was going to ask 2 more questions, but we only have like a minute left.
mm.
So I'll just end since you kind of asked my second to last question that I designed to be my second to last question. You've asked it, you've answered it throughout, but I'd like, if possible, for you to end with uh, what's your one piece of advice for someone who's a student affairs professional who may be looking forward or looking to become a college president? What's your one piece of career advice you'd give?
I'll give you the same advice that my mentor, my ACE mentors gave me. At the end of the day, a presidency is all about fit, not about the title, not about the type of institution, not about the contract, not about the salary. It is about fit. You will know if it's the right fit, and they will know, and hopefully they will know if it's the right fit. And if it is, you will be highly successful, and everything else will come from that.
Great advice. On behalf of NASPA Region 2 and myself, I want to thank you, Joe, for being a part of this. And yes, we did both share a birthday last week, and so happy birthday to you. And thank you again. Our next session, which will start at 11 o'clock, so there's a little half an hour break, is Intergroup Dialogue and Advancing DEI in Higher Education and Beyond. And the link to that is in the email that you were sent. So thank you again. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah,
say, Jeff, if please feel free to pass my information along to the participants.
will do.
If anyone would like to reach out, engage in further discussion, or if I can be of any assistance, I'm more than happy to do that. Thank
Yes.
you.
And he's also very active on social media. You can find him on there.
Thank you.
So thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you at 11 o'clock. Thanks again.